Free thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded. Tommy Nation Politics.
Hey guys, this is Tommy Nation Politics.
Started out in San Francisco.
155 bill that was passed recently. It took me 5 days and 9 hours to read through the majority of it.
And now, story time by Tommy Nation
when looking into
Politics.
CPS, when reading into this kind of statutes and stuff, you have to read the laws because there's going to be people that are going to counter-argue. And if you don't have any, like if you're just on merit, like, you know, if you just not
you don't have the receipts,
but if you like have no facts behind it,
you don't have the
just
receipts.
get
You're just blathering,
just get ran all over.
like a propagandist.
I'm not getting ran over. I'm giving you the facts. I'm giving you facts from last summer. I'm giving you facts that what's going on here, and you just seem to it's a laughing matter to all of you. And it's a laughing matter.
I'm not laughing, Mike. I'm not laughing. That's the thing. I'm not laughing
at that. But Michael, if you would like us to enter the evidence into an exhibit, I need to see receipts. And see, Sauce had that receipts, sources. You're telling me these things. They need to be backed up by evidence. Don't you understand that? Like, people can't. If you say you murdered somebody, if someone said Michael murdered someone, we would need evidence of that. Otherwise, we can't just throw you in jail because someone said Michael murdered someone. That would be proving a case, Michael. That's why we need due process.
There's proof all over. There's proof all over the media. I'm not sure exactly why you're not seeing it. Maybe you live
It's amazing how people that don't have any arguments go to the fake news media.
To protect my family, okay? And
Get in your safe space. Get in your safe space, Michael.
it's not a safe space, man. I'm giving her protection right now, so she's not around this type of disgusting material.
Totally, bro. I understand the safe space.
I might be savaged and unfiltered, though, but I do have a heart and I do have morals, okay? And these parents that have these children around this sick, fucking demented shit, they belong in fucking prison, and these fucking kids belong away from these fucking parents.
See what happens, Jamar, when you sit back and you watch, and you now he's emotional. Now you realize that this is personal to him. Don't you see that, Jamar? Instead of just yelling at him, now Michael reveals himself. This isn't about the laws.
I'm not.
Really, something's up with you, Michael.
No. I'm protected. I'm a friend, and see what the real truth out there is.
I'm a leftist, Michael, and I see pain in your eyes. So
no, I don't. There is no fucking pain in my eyes.
Okay, whatever you say, man.
And I'm very
surprised
that Sauce is not speaking up on this, Sauce.
Sauce, is there something that you want to say before I end the show?
You're a Christian man, and this needs to be brought about. I mean, I thought we're fighting for this country. I thought we're fighting for this country, man. You're not fighting for this country because you're letting it go right by you, brother. That's what's wrong.
Michael, it's okay. I'm going to end the show. This is getting a little bit too emotional for me. So, on your part. So. Anyway, we're going to be free thinking and minded, and now I realize that, I learned something.
Smiling about it, Sauce. How dare you, man?
Okay, guys.
And there you have it.
At the end of the day, it's really us, right?
Fucking jerk off, man.
I don't know, guys.
I really didn't know, guys.
Hi guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics.
I really didn't know. A friend of mine asked me today, why all the judgment with the LGBTQ community?
Tommy Nation Politics presents a free thought analysis of a reflection.
And now,
in our
story
present direction.
time by Tommy Nation Politics.
To put a half-naked adult in the room with a small child and having them read a book. It's child abuse. Candace Owens. I'm introducing a bill to make it illegal for children to be exposed to drag queen performances. Marjorie Taylor Greene. The events of this past weekend were horrifying and show a disturbing trend in which perverted adults are obsessed with sexualizing young children. As a father of 2 young children, I would never take my children to a drag show, and I know the rest of my Republican colleagues wouldn't either. Protecting our own children isn't enough, and our responsibility as lawmakers extends to the sexualization that is happening across Texas. Texas State Representative Brian Slayton explaining why he is introducing a ban on minors watching drag shows. How did drag queens get into schools in the first place? Why does anyone think it's acceptable, let alone crucial, to keep them there? Charles C. W. Cook, National Review. Apparently some of this has spilled into the streets. A protester at a family-friendly drag show in Texas, holding a sign that said "Stop grooming the kids," explained to a reporter, "I don't believe that I should be seeing signs advertising for children to be dancing on stage with men in thongs and in inappropriate clothing and makeup." A group of Proud Boys stormed a drag queen story hour in California, reportedly screaming about pedophilia and terrifying the children while shouting, "We have to save the children." Drag queen story hours made an appearance in Matt Walsh's vicious transphobic Daily Wire documentary What is a Woman?, which I recently reviewed. As further evidence of the threat LGBTQ people pose to the children of America, it is not surprising that as drag queens have put on events for children, conservatives have gotten angry and started accusing them of grooming children for sexual activity. Not all drag queens are gay men, but many are, and as Yasmin Nair notes, the figure of the gay man in particular as a sexual predator still haunts culture and continues to re-emerge. Nair quotes Anita Bryant, who waged an infamous campaign of homophobia in the 70s, saying, "As a mother, I know that homosexuals cannot biologically reproduce children, therefore, they must recruit our children." Great strides in the acceptance and visibility of LGBTQ people have been made over the last 30 years. Partly, though, this has come about through gay men and women having to insist that they pose no threat to the established order. Just as Barack Obama felt the need to distance himself from the radical politics of his black pastor, Pete Buttigieg succeeded as a gay candidate in part because he presented himself as committed to traditional American institutions. Harvard, McKinsey, the military. Conservatives made some nasty comments about Buttigieg after he took paternity leave, but the militant homophobia of Anita Bryant is thankfully waning. Still, the current wave of anti-drag queen rhetoric and protests have forced drag queens themselves to worry for their safety. As Drag Queen Story Hour director Jonathan Hamill told ABC News, "Being a part of the LGBT community and a queer person in general, we've always experienced hate and slurs and homophobia and transphobia. That's unfortunately just part of our existence. All this feels different and very real, and it feels a bit scarier." The panic about drag queens fraternizing with children shows that the intense fear and hatred of those who challenge the norms of gender and sexuality is still widespread on the right. There is no evidence behind the libelous charge that drag queens who like to read stories to kids are pedophiles. The sexualization is in the eye of the beholder. Personally, I find it weird that someone would think there was something inherently sexual about dresses, wigs, makeup, and jewelry. In fact, I think conservatives who try to articulate it would find that they don't really know why they don't like drag queens and can't quite explain what their problem is. The National Review article quoted above expresses bewilderment that drag queens in schools are a thing, and asks how anyone could find such events acceptable, but does not try to explain why they wouldn't be acceptable. Candace Owens says that the drag queens are half naked. Not so, and that having such people in a room with a small child and having them read a book is child abuse. But why? It is very interesting that the right, strict defenders of parental rights when it comes to preventing children from exposure to critical race theory, suddenly starts talking about using criminal law and taking people's children away if parents take their kids to a drag show. Here we see something fundamental about right-wing politics exposed. It is not actually, despite the endless use of the word freedom, about freedom at all. It is about freedom within a very narrowly prescribed range. The moment men start wearing women's clothes and dancing, we must cover the children's eyes in case they get infected with unconventional notions about gender roles.
Why all the judgment with the LGBTQ community? There was a time where it was actually outlawed. It was an abomination, don't forget. In the British monarchy rule, it was illegal to be homosexual. You could go to jail for it. People were afraid. People were questioning who they were, hating themselves, led to a huge mental health crisis of LGBTQIA Americans, citizens of the world. We still haven't really gone over. Still one of the biggest groups that commit suicide. One of the biggest groups that's constantly marginalized and constantly used as a political prop to distract the American people from the real issues that we face that will never be solved, because we have a two-party system that runs on these issues and uses them as talking points. And if they solve these problems, then how will they get elected? My friends, how did we get here? How did we start getting distracted by other people and judging other people? I answered to my friend, why all the judgment? Why do they always have something to say about us? Why do they call us sick degenerates? My reply simply was, a lot of people are so wrapped up in you. They have to be. They must be wrapped up in your faults and your shortcomings. They have to look at your life and judge you, because if they didn't have you, they would have to look inwards to their shortcomings, their faults, their imperfections. And that, as a country, it's not comfortable to do in any way, shape, or form. Self-reflection and self-awareness is almost as illegal as QAnon and questioning science. It's much better to put yourself up, project yourself as a photogenic, photoshopped, idle cartoon of yourself. Talk about all the wonderful things that you had, what you've eaten, how productive you are, how much money you make. It's far more appropriate to talk about your productivity, to talk about your wealth, to talk about how righteous you are and how those people are so sick. They're so less than you, isn't it? It's funny, guys, how we got here. Well, it was an erosion and degradation of our society, step by step, brick by brick, and stone by stone. When in the course of human events, when there is abject corruption from tyrants who have usurped the reins of government, that have turned a sovereign country, a once sovereign country, into a wasteland experiencing the symptoms in abundance of late-stage capitalism. When the degrading pillars of our institutions have been observed to be eroded permanently and can no longer be preserved nor sustained, it becomes necessary for one people who were unanimously united under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, thoughts and ideas such as liberty and justice. It becomes vital. It becomes vital to dissolve the political bands which have traditionally governed us, and assume among the powers of the earth the separate but equal station to which the laws of nature and the laws of God entitle them. A decent reflection that would accurately illustrate the road from which we have wrought upon ourselves such misfortune and such disaster. That should be analyzed by non-dogmatic, epistemological free thought. So guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics, and let's be free-thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded. Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics. free thought reflection of our direction. Let's talk about, I'd like to talk, just like many free thinkers throughout history have talked. They've talked in parables, stories, morality plays, fables, to teach a lesson and to simplify just the steps of erosion and degradation that have consisted with where we are in our current predicaments. The current predicament of consistent crises, of corruptive crony capitalism. Now, once upon a time, guys, there was a country. Now, of course, like every country, they had a upper class, middle class, and lower class. However, this country was far different than the rest. For instance, for example anyway, while other countries had monarchs, rulers, and kings, our country had colonists. And those colonists came to this land to pursue religious freedom, to have equal opportunity, and to have equality. They had three main beliefs. You could call them Judeo-Christian principles, you could call them Masonic philosophies. But their three main principles were as follows. And this was including the elites, who by far were not perfect and were absolute scum like all elites. But the funny thing, guys, is the colonial elites, they were still looked at as scum to the British monarchy. They were like misfit toys. There they were, set there to govern this land, colonize it for King George III. And as King George III imposed taxes upon them, as he didn't assist them with any means for survival, and as he expected them to be his servants 3,000 miles from his throne and his court. He taxed them without representation. He used their bodies for his military. He used their houses for his armies. He used their sources of food to feed his warmongering lust for power and to expand his empire. And the colonists, even though they might be elites, some of them, even though some of them were fishmongers and some of them were pious Protestants, they all agreed on three main principles. People that were in this land and existed throughout the entire world, they all were endowed by a creator with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and happiness. These were gifts that they would be given by God, and they would be protected by civic duty and to be handed down to their children and posterity. Their second main belief was that all men were created equal, whether you be a ruling monarch, whether you be a colonist, whether you be a sharecropper or waif, whether you be a Quaker or a wench, all men were created equal under God and endowed by these alienable rights. The third principle, of course, was that it is a patriotic duty, a civic duty, to defend these beliefs and share them to promote the general welfare for our posterity and to secure the blessings of liberty and life for all time. And that was our birthright. While many countries were born upon blood and treasure and a monarchical reign, our country never saw any ruling monarch. It was devised by republic democracy, and it was the first of its kind. An experiment, a great experiment that would illustrate the power of freedom bravery, and willingness not to compromise principles and values. Now, like every country, we've had our growing pains. And as the founding fathers, although they had other principles that were not as gracious, nor were they acceptable, such as slavery, they also had those principles which they wrote into the Declaration of Independence, and which they legitimized and they sustained in our Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. All men created equal and endowed by their Creator with life, liberty, and happiness, guys. All men created equal. No one lower than the rest. And there would be justice that would fall upon the wealthy and the sharecropper blindly. It would be consistent. It would be judicial. It would be empirical. It would be true justice. True justice, liberty, and freedom. All these values, as the growing pains continued and evolved throughout our country, didn't seem as exciting as an industrial revolution that boomed around 1750 to 1830, in which the corporate industry, using the individual powers of the working class and the labor which they so hastily gave because they were promised equality of opportunity, they built a wonderful economic miracle, guys. An industrial revolution built the corporations that exist today. The railroads, the fashion and clothing companies and textiles. There were newspapers and publishers. There was an establishment that was built from the labor of the working class and the supervision of the managerial class and the funding and resources of the upper class. And united, indivisible, it was good. Many promises and blessings came in. But as the desires and wants of the corporate class started to evolve away from freedom and liberty, for those were not important. Of course, quarterly growth was important. Maximizing profits and revenue was important. Making monopolies and establishing yourself superior in the market was important. People became less important. Equality became less important. Liberty became less important. Liberty became an enemy, actually, because liberty stifled the working ethic. And so the corporations furiously, in many horrible, atrocious ways, sought to put to rest the old principles and values of the American founding fathers and to raise new principles and values of productivity, growth, wealth, glamour, success, innovation. All these things are not horrible by themselves, but when they're led not by inalienable rights, life, liberty, and happiness, they became greed. And the new principles were known as capitalism. Now, it's funny, guys, these economic theories of governing, they're not anything like in the dictionary. Of course, capitalism is a free market. It's supposed to be a competitive market that establishes mainly productivity and a better product because of competition. Because the winners are supposed to be better at making their product and the losers die out by making an inferior product. And the market is governed by the consumer. Now, when the market is governed by the consumer, it's a free market, guys. But when the stock market crashes and the government bails out the stock market with government money, buffering it during a COVID pandemic, and gives $40 billion to a market And the shareholders and the CEOs take that money and give themselves bonuses and golden parachutes and leave the American people with inflation, a cost of living rise, stagnant wages, and income inequality, not since the Gilded Age. That free market was destroyed. Now, of course, that's the thing that they've recently destroyed. First, they destroyed our principles and values. They tried to take our life, liberty, and happiness. They tried to take that, they tried to substitute that for growth, productivity, and wealth. That was the first pillar of our institutions that crumbled, the corporations. The second to go, of course, was because, during the 1920s, industry was becoming a lot more, let's just say there was the prohibition and there were organized crime. And so we had a lot of things on our hands with the bank robbers and security not being as it was and law and order not being established, people running rampant. The country was in a state of absolute disarray. And it took those civil servants that were still representing the people. They would call them Whigs or Democrats or Tories or Republicans, the political parties. That was when they were still representing the people. And we had a lot of courageous and virtuous people from all of those parties, like Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, famously, who did the New Deal. We're going to roll up our sleeves and get to work. He fought against his friends and compatriots in the Ivy League schools. Those people that were industrial, influencers. He fought against his friends to make a new deal, where there was child labor laws, there was a weekend, there was a Labor Day. There were sick days established. There were pensions. Things for the working class to fall back on, guys, because once again, that represented the equality and opportunity that all Americans can attain, because all Americans are created equal and given inalienable rights of our Creator. Once again, the corporations saw the old principles and values rise up and defeat their schemes to create wealth by exploiting the labor of the lower classes and destroying the safety nets of the impoverished. So they had an idea. They decided that they would become people. These corporations decided that they would become people and that their money was speech. Well, corporations are people, my friend. And they used their speech, or money, to bribe, blackmail, to bow the civil servants that were working at the will of the American people. Many of them were enticed by the campaign finance contributions and enrichment war chests that would put them in office for unanimous, untold amounts of years. And they could stay in power forever, and they could collect and make the laws that would then, of course, benefit their donors. And the rest of the, of course, people that disagreed with that kind of philosophy of bribery and corruption and cronyism, they were weeded out during the 1940s and 50s with McCarthyism and socialism. They were, of course, the leftists. The leftists were blacklisted. They were scared off. They were smeared. And the corporations and the corrupt politicians used the institutions of law enforcement, i.e. the FBI, to ensure that no leftist or progressive would ever come to power to curtail their abilities to control and exploit the labor of the middle class. Again. So of course, the communists were smeared, even though they helped us in World War II, defeat the Nazis, and the socialists were smeared, and they were, propagandized. Now, once, of course, the civil servants fell, which were the second pillars of our institutions, the law enforcement was not far behind, of course, because politicians make the laws and the law enforcement enforces the laws. So they fell as well. And when they fell, they used operations in an unconstitutional nature, such as Operation Mockingbird, which you can look up, and other psyops around our country to influence, to lie, deceive, and distract the American people with false narratives, propaganda, while manufacturing consent by the new pillars that stood from the ones that eroded: Wall Street, the banks, and the military-industrial complex. And those three pillars would hold they alone would hold life, liberty, and happiness. While us, the American people, we hold on to illusions, delusions of grandeur, lies of American exceptionalism, and propaganda that is fed to us day by day by day by people that were supposed to be our political servants. And finally, the media fell because they could no longer hold accountable the powerful. Not with the law enforcement people, wiretapping their phones, blackmailing them, telling them to commit suicide, doing psyops in their infiltrating their in their news organizations and spreading propaganda. The media fell last. So guys, that's how it happened. It was the corporations that fell first. They corrupted our political servants. Our political servants let the dogs go hungry, the law enforcement, and they eventually started eating the American citizens. Probably one American president, John F. Kennedy. We'll never know. Probably 55 years from now. And lastly, the media fell and became not the watchdog of the powerful, but the lapdog of the powerful. And that's how we got to this position. It wasn't the immigrants. It wasn't the blacks. It wasn't the Jews. It wasn't the gays. In fact, if you were paying attention and you're not a political partisan puppet, you realize that the banks and Jeffrey Epstein were going hand in hand and assisting each other in child sex trafficking. And guys, it still continues to this day. While law enforcement is taking your tax dollars and censoring you with them. No word on Jeffrey Epstein's successor, although there is a successor, guys. Don't be naive. We won't know who he is because he's probably learned the lessons that Epstein left behind. Don't be extravagant. Don't buy $100 million mansions. Don't buy islands. Definitely don't commission paintings of Bill Clinton in a blue dress. And, stop diddling kids in public. They're a lot bit more careful, guys. They're a lot more organized. They're a lot more sinister and insidious. But all they're doing, guys, simply is replacing our old principles and values that established this country and replacing them with idols of degradation. These principles that you hear now of economic prosperity because of markets that are not free. These profits, the thing that you hear about revenue and profits that are made from exploitation of the working class and the outsourcing of our jobs. This economic prosperity that's made from the railroad workers going in without sick days. And work camps of Uyghurs making goods that will be sent back to us and taxed and sale. These are not the principles and values of our country. Not even remotely. In fact, it takes a daily routine of manufactured propaganda to even try to convey the semblance that it is the country that was founded in 1776. And that's what's happening, guys. the last pillar is the American people, and we are finally falling. We have been polarized for a long time, and we are choosing the political usurpers of the reins of our power instead of a united, unanimous 13 colonies that once defeated a monarch. We are a nation divided, and a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And anytime you hear, that's what I was reflecting on when I hear the hatred and ignorance from people with absolutely no facts, and they have absolutely no idea where they heard these specious statistics. They just know that something's sick, bro. You're sick, bro. I thought we were fighting for the soul of this country. Well, to fight for the soul of this country, you have to recognize that the soul of this country has been eroded to the point where it's probably and permanently unable to be even sustained or fixed. And it's not the danger is not the homosexuals, blacks, Jews, gays, or immigrants. That is not who substituted our principles and values, curbed our civil liberties, bribed and blackmailed our politicians, and made a mockery of our media. These are not the people who have exploited the labor of the working class, who have outsourced the jobs, who have raised taxes during times of stagnant wages and income inequality, and that's the Gilded Age. They are not the ones who to this day talk to you about productivity when they go to the Virgin Islands and have sex with underage children and mock you to your faces as they sell out and extract every single solitary valuable resource from not only our country but the entire world in a globalist scheme of the New World Order. It's a New World Order, but we gotta lead it. How about we don't lead the New World Order, Joe? How about we go back to the principles that were the common bonds that united us as brothers and countrymen? How about we promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity? How about we provide equality of opportunity to all men, for they are created equal and certainly endowed by our Creator, God Himself, by inalienable rights of life, liberty, and happiness? How about we choose people over profits? How about we choose truth over lies? How about we choose empirical data over propaganda? How about we choose not bandwagon mentality, but free thinking? How about we choose righteousness instead of wrong? How about we choose facts over fear? How about we stop demonizing and marginalizing immigrants that are fleeing their country due to the sanctions that we've inflicted upon their own countries, and thereby ensuring the cartels that have been made rich by our war on drugs and war on poverty, ensuring their reign of terror persists? How about we let go of the coups that we do in Venezuela to try to put puppet leaders in and screw their governments to the point where they are non-functioning? How about if we stop doing those things, guys? If we stop arming rebels to overthrow leaders of governments, I bet these Venezuelans wouldn't start coming to our country if they had a functioning government. I bet that if we stopped doing little psyop assassination attempts on the Iranian prime minister, I bet guys,
I bet they probably wouldn't want to make a nuclear bomb, guys. I bet if we stop our regime change wars and our lying psyop tactics for power politics and get back to our principles and values, I bet, guys, we could be a better country. We could make America great again. We might be able to save or salvage some semblance of a great land that was free, that was equal, that was forged in revolution and free thought. But if we persist on the path that we are on in the present, and we ensure our own demise by letting the corporations continue their strategy of growth profits, even if it means nuclear holocaust, then I hope we're prepared to die for our newfound principles and values of profits over people. I hope you're prepared to die for Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Coca-Cola, and General Mills, General Electric. I hope you're prepared to die for those, because those are your new principles and values, guys. And I just want to make that clear. So when you think you're fighting for this country, when you're demonizing people that are in need and marginalized, just remember that you are not fighting for this country. You are literally a redcoat. You're a loyalist. There's only two kinds of people in this country that have always been, always will be in this country. There were always two to begin with. There were loyalists and there were patriots. When in the course of time and things, it becomes necessary for a free people to look towards empirical data and decide which one you are. Till then, be free-thinking, innovative, and open-minded, guys. And I'm sorry about I missed the live stream on Tuesday. I usually live stream on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, but I was working. I was trying to be productive. I was trying to maximize profits. Hit me up with questions, comments, facebook.com/TommyNationPolitics of how we can communicate a better way for our world and our country. Cheers.
Who shall sit in the loftiest station? Say, boy, say.